Hi folks, Justin Lutz here. I'm the founder of Bong Barbell Training. We're the only barbell training club in Siem Reap, Cambodia. Our mission is to make Cambodia strong again by teaching the squat, press, bench press, and deadlift. Thanks for training at Bong, where physical strength is the most important thing in life. Buckle up for video 3, the press. The press. The press is the oldest upper body barbell exercise, and it's the most useful upper body exercise in the weight room, even more useful than the bench press. After the 1972 Olympics, it was removed from the sport of Olympic weightlifting. There used to be a clean and press contested lift, but it was notoriously hard to judge in competition, so it was removed. Now, don't let that deter you from using the press in your training, because the press is great for training and we should use it in strength training. The press is performed standing with the shoulders and arms only. There's no bend of the knees. It can also be called a two-hands press. Some common press variations. These variations are less useful for strength training though, so we won't be using them. The seated press is done seated, obviously, which limits its use for strength training. And that's because of the shorter kinetic chain. Shorter kinetic chain makes it less useful for strength training. So assume that we're talking about a barbell. If you hear the word press, assume that it's a barbell press unless specified. So a dumbbell press, this here is a seated dumbbell press, and maybe you can already see the limitation in this. A dumbbell must be cleaned up into the pressing position to start, which limits its strength application. Imagine you take these out of the dumbbell rack. Well, now you have to get them up into this position, and that could expend quite a lot of energy. Also at the top, look how unstable these are at the top lockout position. That could be an issue, especially as the weight gets heavier. The push press is a press with help from bending the knees, and we won't be using the push press at this stage because we want to be able to quantify the press, and if we bend our knees, it's hard to quantify. We don't know how much assistance came from the bend of the knees. So for now, we will not be doing a push press, and we won't be bending our knees. You can maybe save that for later on. We'll do a step-by-step breakdown of the press later in the video, but let's just look at a few of the key points. The lift starts with the bar on top of the anterior deltoids, and the lift is finished at the top with a lockout and a shrug. A couple of important things to note. The bar wants to travel in a straight vertical line over the lifter's midfoot. See, here's the midfoot. We follow this line straight up. The bar wants to stay over the midfoot. So what you'll find is that if the bar comes forward in the press, it will be much more difficult. You don't want the bar to come forward. Also, the elbows are in front of the bar like you see here, not behind. If your elbows drop down and fall behind the bar, you're probably going to miss the rep. Kinetic chain in the press. The press is not just an upper body exercise. The force begins with the feet against the ground, and it ends at the bar in the hands. The press uses the entire body, and it requires balance. Because you're standing up, that makes it a balance exercise. The abs, back, and trunk muscles contract isometrically during the press, and that makes it a core exercise. So if you watched video 2 about the squat, you'll remember that the squat is both a balance and core exercise. The press is as well. The first rep is the hardest. I know that sounds like the name of a love song, but it's true. The first rep is the hardest. And that's because the first rep in the press begins from a dead stop from the front rack position, from the anterior deltoids. So when you first start the set, it begins from a dead stop. Then subsequent reps can use a stretch reflex at the bottom, and the stretch reflex makes it easier. So you might imagine once you press it up to the top and lock out your first rep, you take a big breath and then you lower it down and you use the stretch reflex at the bottom to make the subsequent reps easier. The press is very useful for sport. Being competitive in throwing sports, for example, depends on a big press, or any other sport that requires a lot of upper body power. And that's because the press uses the most muscle mass and central nervous system activation possible for the upper body, more so than the bench press, because the lifter is standing during the press. The press uses a long kinetic chain, again, because the lifter is standing, that makes the kinetic chain long. The incline bench press is not as effective for sport because of the shorter kinetic chain. A lot of football players think that the incline bench press is more effective because it looks more similar to the strength that their football players will display on the field. But if they had read the two-factor model of sport performance, they would know that that's not correct. So the incline bench press is not as effective. The press is the best for sport. Won't the press impinge my shoulder? Many doctors and physical therapists think presses impinge the shoulder because pressing incorrectly can, in fact, impinge the shoulder. Shoulder impingement syndrome is a syndrome involving tendinitis of the rotator cuff muscles as they pass through the subacromial space, the passage beneath the acromion. So basically things get pinched in here. But here's the key point to remember. The shrug of the scapula, here's the scapula, at the lockout of the press makes impingement impossible. So remember to shrug your scapula up at the top of the press. Here are some common causes of shoulder impingement so you can take care to avoid them. Pressing or bench pressing with a flared out elbow position. Notice her elbow. See how it's flared out far from her body here. Or doing ring dips or gymnastics that you're unprepared for often cause shoulder impingement. The press can rehabilitate injured shoulders and rotator cuffs, in some cases more effectively than typical physical therapy prescription, which tends to isolate the rotator cuff. We've all seen these little rotator cuff isolation exercises with the very light dumbbells. And this movement pattern really only exists in a physical therapy clinic. It doesn't really exist in the real world. The press uses the rotator cuff in a natural movement pattern. The press for injury prevention. Pressing overhead prevents shoulder injuries in sports like volleyball and tennis, where there's an overhead component that is dynamic. But sadly, many tennis players are often discouraged from pressing by ill-advised coaches. The press uses the rotator cuff muscles isometrically to stabilize the shoulder joint in the lockout at the top. The press is extremely useful for strength training, but it's also useful for injury prevention and shoulder rehab. One of the reasons why the barbell press specifically is so helpful for shoulder rehab is because the weak muscles can be supported by the stronger ones while doing a correct barbell press. But when we say correct, the key point is that you must lock it out with a shrug at the top, and that the strength of the finish must increase as the weight goes up. So just take a note of this lockout position, and if you're not able to lock it out with a shrug at the top, you need to back off the weight. Press correctly to protect your shoulders and prevent injury. Learn to press. I highly recommend watching this video on YouTube from Starting Strength, teaching you the press step by step. I've taken this exact video and put it into slides for your convenience. Start with the empty bar in the rack. The rack will be set to the same height as in the squat, so the bar will be about the level of your mid-sternum. The squat stance works well. You don't want to stand too narrow because that will cause balance problems. You'll have your heels under your shoulders. Find your grip on the bar. You'll want to rotate your hands into pronation by rotating the thumbs down towards the feet. Check out the video for an illustration of what this will look like. When you take the bar out of the rack, you want to find the correct grip width. The correct grip width will produce vertical forearms, and you might have to experiment to find this width. Notice that his hands are near the smooth part of the bar, so it will be more narrow than your bench press grip. Don't use your bench press grip because that will be too wide. Your elbows will be just in front of the bar from the side view. The bar is on the heel of the palms directly over the forearm bone. Look straight ahead at a point on the wall that is level with the eyes. Fix your gaze on that point for the entire set. Lift your chest. Your upper spinal erectors contract. Lift your sternum up to your chin. Once your chest and elbows are up, you are ready to press. We'll learn the press in 2 stages. In stage 1, we'll put the bar in the finished lockout position overhead, and in stage 2, we'll create a mechanically efficient bar path to that same lockout position that we can recreate every time. Stage 1. Take a big breath and hold it. Drive the bar up overhead. The bar will be directly over your shoulders, over the back of the neck. Take a look at the picture sequence. Lock the elbows and shrug the shoulders up to support the bar. Once you've practiced stage 1, we'll go to stage 2. We have to drive the bar to that same position efficiently. The bar needs to move vertically over your midfoot, but it also needs to get around your head and face. And remember, we don't want the bar to travel forward of the midfoot. That will create a moment arm, and it will make the bar feel much heavier. You'll probably miss the rep. So, in order to get around the head and face, we'll produce a motion of the hips forward. And there's a nice little drill to practice this. So you can put your hands on your hips, squeeze your quads, squeeze your abs. Lock your knees hard in extension. You'll feel a band of tension along your anterior, that's your front side. Push your hips forward. The weight goes onto your toes. Okay, and then once you've practiced that slowly, now we'll practice it a little bit more quickly. So push into it fast. Push the hips forward. Again, the weight shifts into the toes and then back to the midfoot. The bar will drop a little at the forward extent of the hip reach. The bar will rebound upwards as the hips bounce back. The press happens after the hips have rebounded off the front of the tension, not before. As the bar crosses the top of your forehead, get under the bar. And here we have an illustration of what happens if the bar gets forward of your center of mass. Here is the moment arm that's created, and the weight will feel very heavy if it's out here ahead of the center of mass. Here are some tips that will help your press. Don't move the bar back. Slam yourself forward under the bar. Keep the bar close to your face. Aim for your nose as the bar leaves your shoulders. Aim for your nose on the way back down. Bounce back off the anterior tension. Move yourself forward under the bar. Practice with the empty bar until this movement pattern improves. And for the final stage, stage 3, sets of 5. We'll start adding weight in 5 to 10 pound jumps, performing sets of 5 at each interval. When the bar speed starts to slow markedly on the 5th rep of the set, you're finished with your first press workout. Be careful not to overdo it on your first session. You'll have plenty of time to add weight to the bar in the future. Remember, this is part of the starting strength novice linear progression. The bench press and the overhead press here, abbreviated OHP, are alternated. So it goes bench press, press, bench press, press, and so on. Make sure you rest. Come back 48 hours later and you'll add some weight to the bar next time. We usually recommend starting with about a 5 pound jump. Be careful not to make jumps in weight that are too large. You may have to purchase the small plates in the future so you can make fine-tuned jumps in weight. If you're ready to start training, here's the perfect clip to watch. It's called the Novice Linear Progression, your first 30 days. I've got a YouTube link for you. They'll walk you through your first 30 days of training with barbells. Thanks for tuning in to this video from Strong Bong Barbell Training. Remember that physical strength is the most important thing in life. See you next time. We no fear no sound, we are real #1. Like Usain Bolt, Mike Tyson, Jordan. We just a done them one by one. So put your one in the air for the champion appear. When the figure done them, you know that's clear. From Mr. Pin said them better beware. Real champion, so you know so we no fear. Run them here and there and anywhere. Up, down, downtown, in the city and the square. From me appear, sound boy disappear with the big up plates we a kill up in here. Some said them bad, but not bad like we. For we kill, jump and sound, kill them for free. Clash with them, but they drown them out as say them a kill in sound, but them gang. It goes so rappa pam pam, rappa pam pam pam. My sound a champion one by one. Rappa pam pam, rappa pam pam. Me stepping at them face a murderation. Rappa pam pam, rappa pam pam.